Welcome to the Color of Success podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. Many of us are feeling a wide range of emotions: sadness, anger, fear, sometimes hopelessness and helplessness. This season, we will be exploring all the feelings and ways to empower each other to take action. So, let's go. Game on. Agatha Peters is a Nigerian-American psychotherapist, founder of Beautiful Sunshine Therapy, and the author of Trapped in Their Script: Reclaim Your Life from Narcissistic Parents and Cultural Expectations. She is dedicated to helping adult children of narcissistic parents, especially those from collectivist cultures, where family loyalty often overshadows individual well-being. Having experienced the healing power of therapy herself, she is passionate about helping others discover the same transformation and offers guidance on embracing one's identity while respecting cultural ties. Thank you so much for joining me, Agatha. I'm really excited to jump in and learn more about your experiences.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
Well, first, let's jump into it. How did you come about studying and practicing and even authoring a new book on how to heal from narcissistic trauma, particularly within a cultural lens?
hmm Well, when I came to the United States around age 14, so I am an immigrant, and during that process, I didn't really understand what, trauma is and abuse, that kinds of stuff. But I did experience depression and anxiety a lot, and obviously, as a child, you think that that's you, and that's why that's, all happening. So I started therapy, and during that process, I remember my therapist telling me, I mean, this was plenty of years ago, but that point out that I had a parent that is a narcissist. And just that for me was really hard for me to hear and not really understanding what to do with that. And from um, as a child, you're very protective of your own parents. So you're like, nope, that can't be true. It's not them, it's me, kind of thing. So, as I grew up trying to fix myself still, and by thinking I could fix myself, I could fix that person, whatever fixing means. Um, and it just was not working. There was nothing I could do and, say, which, the personality is pretty much there. There was no change in, and it was really crippling. But as, I decided to do the work, and after starting to do some realization and dig into more into my own self and my work, and then working with my clients, I realized, okay, this is different, in cultural lenses and how we grew up in cultures like mine, which is more collective, and yeah, we family values are big for us, and it's very, very difficult for us to be able to accept that, our parents is at fault, or, we come from a place that we're very proud of our cultures as well. Rather we take that blame on. Um, so anyways, within that work, I healed, thankfully, in a way where I could still call it sort of distance love in a way where I could love
Hmm.
that person and still love myself and take some of my lessons and what not to do with my own family and my kids. So anyways, it's a very long way of saying that's how I got to writing my book, Trapped in the Script. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot to unpack here. So, I mean, particularly what you're speaking to is one, immigration is difficult. Coming to a new place, how do you adapt to a culture and all these things about assimilation, acculturation, et cetera?
Right.
Like how, to what extent do you do that? And then you're saying that it's really, really hard to kind of identify and move towards acceptance that this isn't all me. This isn't just
hmm
my problem. And so, walk me through how you came about defining for yourself what are narcissistic traits in a parent? How can we recognize it?
Yeah. So, how I look at it, there is different ways of parenting, and particularly in cultures as mine, and maybe similar to ones you're familiar with. There is the way we tend to parent or where we grew up is called authoritarian style parenting, where very strict, very rigid. You're a doctor because your parent is a doctor or wants you to be a doctor. So there's already the strict rules where you're born into, and there's no way to, you just fall into that. Um, and that on itself is very difficult, and for sure. But as what I see there with uh, parents as they grow into these cultures, oftentimes they adapt especially when you meet those goals. They're proud, they're happy. They might also leave some of that, knowing that, okay, that person is now an adult, they can do for themselves, they can fend their. Oftentimes, that way of also parenting is a way to make sure that you succeed, a way to make sure that you um, part of the community in a way where you are providing in that sort of way. But with someone who is a narcissist, a parent who is a narcissist, they just keep going. They never fall into that authoritative role where it's more authoritative, you can more flexibility as that child has even accomplished their goal and has, really an adult at that point. They
Mhm.
continue it on. They will continue to where you get a because they become grandparents, it still doesn't change. And they will even, um, insert themselves in your home if you're married. Insert yourself in they need to be part of every single decision in your life, and it continues on. um where you feel as though even if you were, say again, I'll use the doctor as an example, you're now a doctor. You think, okay, I have accomplished that. Well, they might compare you with the other doctors in your field. Why you're not getting those awards like, the other ones, and why you picked ER, why aren't you a sergeant? So it's just never enough, right? So yeah, for any adult child, it's very overwhelming. Then that phone calls feel triggering. The family gathering is exhausting. People feel they're championing, your parent is championing you, because that's what they see, right? You're successful, you're great, you have all of these things together, but they have no idea the heavy stuff that goes on to even get there, right?
Help folks understand that differentiation between the cultural values, because yes, you're right, there
Hmm.
are overlap, right, of like
Yeah.
older generation Chinese families that are very much similar to how you're describing it. Like,
Hmm.
this is how you should do things, this is how you should hold your child.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
so easy to do it this way. You should have an A plus and take these AP classes.
Hmm.
Fortunately, my parents didn't have that level or whatnot, but
Yeah.
observing being a member of, communities. So how do we differentiate those that take it that step too far versus, wow, this is just ingrained in the cultural aspect?
Well, you shouldn't get depression from a parent, an environment where you feel so overbearing, like it's so overbearing that you can't even excel. You're scared to be in the home. You're tiptoeing around. That child it's no longer just an overbearing, okay, hold your baby this way, it's not just that. You're wronged for it. You're seen as they might also throw jabs and insults and this. It's because it feels so much that psychologically it damages you. in a way you cannot function. And it's just within that one person. Oftentimes, you might have an auntie that does the same thing and it doesn't feel the same. Heck, you might even have a mom or a dad and like a different sex parent in the same home that does the same thing, but it doesn't feel like there is a difference of someone maybe doing it from a place of love versus um, no empathy, very rigid, just doing it in a way to make you feel small and less than. Um, so, or I did it better this way. There's competition too that might also um, be brought up, especially when it's like I see it often too on a mom daughter dynamic, or if it's a father son dynamic too. So yeah,
Do you think that they may see their children as an extension of themselves versus a separate
absolutely.
person?
Absolutely. That's the whole narcissist. Yeah. So, and even I think it goes towards the grandchildren, they might, if it's a dad, they really want that person to have, they might have fought for a son really badly, right? And so wanting the female to keep going, whomever they're married to or with, to keep going until they have that boy. And when they have a boy, they want grandkids that is also a male. And they're still not happy within that still, but there is that, yeah, absolutely the extension of themselves. And you see it as it still even gets further into adulthood.
So you mentioned gender. Are we bringing that in from the cultural aspect where males are valued more than women?
Hmm.
So we're now a couple generations down the line. How do we kind of communicate or mitigate that belief so that, and I don't know if you have daughters, sons mixed,
I have both a boy and a girl. Yes.
and how does that play out when, we're raising our children? So just your thoughts.
Oh man, that's hard. There's culture in that too, but it's also westernized, right? It's oftentimes we're in a society where, even in this society where men are deemed more valuable and women, is it patriarchy? Yes.
Yes.
Say it wrong, but we're in that culture where we fall in the swords for men often. So I think what I try to do in my home, at least, is to raise my female the same way I raise my male, and to raise my male the same way I raise my female. Um, but also not, my boy might say I want to ruffle house and fight with with but also letting them know you can play, that can be played, but we can also hurt, people in general, not just we can't hurt girls, but we really can't, physically hurt people, things like that. So it's really looking into just treating them both equal, as equal as possible. And I think that's also how they will view the world. Not just by gender. But it's hard to do sometimes because, yeah, you constantly, I feel like even in my home, I sometimes have to wear the therapy hat.
For sure. It doesn't leave us.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what you're talking about is kind of healing, particularly in adulthood. Until we'll get over to that, but for kids that are going through this, what do you wish that you would have known or had at
Yeah.
that time?
Oh, with kids, like, I think it's just so heartbreaking. I think for kids, we grow up wanting to please our parents. That's just because, they're a world. We see them like the heroes and everything. Um, but I think with kids, I just say hang in there. It's really, really hard to fight that feeling right then, but it gets better. Um, and for therapists who work with kids, it's really just giving them that space to feel safe, even if it's for 1 hour a week. It may not feel like a lot, but it is something to have one person in your world that sees you and really sees the challenges that you're going through, or even make it fun for that 1 hour. Um, I think it goes a long way. But because it's such a hard situation to be in. For those kids, I think of it even in so many different situations where, when I used to do my work in the ER, and I would always be the one that would always ask, hey, can I interview them separately from
Mm.
the parent? Because, it's just so important. I think when and this is a hard thing too, and why narcissism is so it's so hard to also detect, because you go in every situation with in kids and parental situations like this. If you go to a hospital, a doctor asks you a question, they're always going to look at the parent. Hey, tell me what's wrong with your child. Right. And because the doctors really believe, yes, this parent wants world. And sometimes they're the reason why they're even there, but they have no idea. So, and that parent is going to feed whatever. And the world is going to always believe a parent over a child, because that's what is,
There's a power dynamic
yeah,
differential.
there is a power dynamic, but also, truthfully, in most cases, parents want to make sure their kids are safe. That's what it should be. There, unfortunately, it's not always that way. Not for every child. Not every child is that lucky. So in those situations, where, I've had to say, hey, can I, talk to them separate together, and then have the parent, separate the room, leave the room, sorry, and then interview that child, and then also talk to the parent alone as well. So everyone feels like they had time, but I get it. Not in the hospital environment. In a lot of places, it's just not enough time for that. But it really goes, you can maybe see a little bit of what is happening, versus just having to see it just through that parent's lens alone.
I think the added layer is that folks that have narcissistic traits, they present
Yeah,
really
very well.
well, very charming. In fact, some aspects of society, I would say, really, incentivize narcissism,
Hmm.
right? I know what
Hmm.
I'm talking about. I
Hmm.
can excel and be a leader. And
Hmm.
so I think, though, when you're applying that kind of CEO mentality at
Yeah,
home, it
yeah.
can feel very suffocating, and
Hmm.
children don't have that language to quite put their finger on why this explaining it to other people why it is so suffocating.
Hmm. Well, for me, an instant, I might be talking to a scenario where a child is in there for suicidal ideations, or
Right.
there for, extreme case of, depression and things like that. It's really important to make sure that, you have time with that parent, and not just assume that what they tell you is in fact 100%, and time with that child alone. Um, I mean, yeah, I think if you do this for long enough, you can maybe smell a narcissist from afar. I've been able to just get them from an email alone when they ask for help. They just can't help themselves but list how
Hmm.
charming, how amazing.
Absolutely. So now
Yeah.
when you're an adult, that's usually when you are able to kind of reflect and unfortunately sometimes there's been so much damage. But let's
Hmm.
say, as you get into adulthood, what are some ways that folks can actually kind of dive deeper in this and start to heal from some of this
Yeah.
trauma?
Yeah. So I've had clients that are, identify as Indians, and they live in one home, and they live with the parents still, even though they're adults, they're married to, their partner is there, their kids are there. Like, you know, um, both in-laws might still be in the home, and one might be a narcissist, things like that. It's so hard in those settings too, where, which is different from Western culture, because when you're done, you're an adult, you start school, you oftentimes leave. And then in some cultures, you don't leave. Even here in the US, they still,
Right.
are all together in that home. So, in those situations, I really have put on an armor in a way where it's just sort of the suit where you feel okay, which is hard to get to because I think a lot of us want to be loved and cared, and it takes practice, and it takes even me seeing that play in therapy too. Um, but just to be able to kind of shield yourself, it's almost from this narcissist. And I think they use whatever information you give them. So the little you can give, the better. I think that's one of it too. And then just creating, I think another one I would think in those communities, I really have them extend out help from others that might also be experiencing what they're experiencing. Because, you know, um, there is power in not just feeling alone and having others in that with you, or just, normalizing it a little bit for you and not making you feel so alone. So some of those approaches I've seen has worked for my clients. Yeah.
How do you help them negotiate maybe the breaking point, right? Because, like,
Yeah, I
one of
know.
those things is
I
just, and
know.
it is really hard. There's no hard line. And at the same time, it's like there are times where, like, literally separating or leaving the situation is pretty much the
Hmm.
solution that would be most effective. So, how do you walk
Yeah.
clients through that?
I let them get there themselves because for me personally, I wasn't ready to hear it. So how do I think a client will be, right? So I have to sit there to just, sometimes there's the straw that breaks the camel's back. There's just one of those things where you get pushed to an extreme. Sometimes it's when they start therapy, really. It's just that they're at that extreme breaking point, but they're not really there yet. It's sort of the alcoholic that starts therapy, right? And then when they lose everything, it's this sort of thing. So you you know, what I'm doing there is just really holding space for them as much and making it as safe as they can. And sometimes it feels so safe at that moment. They're like, well, I can deal with this for another few years. And, because I've adapted the tools and I'm good. Um, but yeah, I'm yet to find that one person that is like, I'm done. Because there is that whole huge cultural, because, I don't tell my clients what to do. So there is that, I think a very I'm done way, I'm cut off is a very westernized way to look at things too. Um, because for a lot of my clients in this situation, it's almost as though when they cut that person's off, they cut off the entire community.
Mhm.
Um, so who is going to be the replacement for that? How do they build that? How do they, if you're here in Oregon, you're not going to just rarely anyone that looks like us around here. So it's fine. It's so hard. So to tell someone to give that up, you might also be setting them up for failure again, right? Um, so it's really when we're ready, what are the steps that we can do to get there? Um, but yeah, for my Westerners, yeah, I think they do reach the I'm done stage, and it's sort of how do I start to finish, get through that. And there's a huge sense of relief when people walk away, absolutely. In any situation, just as DV, all that kinds of stuff, there's a huge sense of relief. But um, sometimes people are just not there yet. We also have to
Absolutely.
honor that as therapists, as hard as that is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think more so from the lens of being a friend or even a distant relative, people have difficulty understanding why people don't leave. And so I think that's really
Yeah.
helpful, a helpful perspective because it's not cut and dry and you can't really tell someone that. It's more of how can I support you
Mhm.
and being a shoulder to lean on, etc. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So, any other thoughts on ways people can start their healing journey?
I think, another way is just acknowledging that this is true for you. I think once we get there, it's, really figuring out there are different ways of healing. There's just not one path. It's not just cutting off. There's also how we can still live within that space until maybe we're there. And if we're never there, that's also okay. I mean, I think, a lot that comes with that oftentimes, and I think pushing people does not help either. Um, yeah, so I think slow, ready, start to journal. I tell people just journal, keep track. Sometimes when you're with a narcissist, the lies get so much that you start to believe those lies too. So maybe journaling your own um, lived situation will help give you some mental clarity as to, is this true? Is this not true? Yeah, I think sometimes that can help you just wake up from what's happening.
And also for others that aren't in therapy, are there any thoughts that you can share about how someone can kind of ease into possibly giving someone feedback that it's too much?
When it's too much, you will know. I think the one thing, too much is it's so, personalized, right? Like it just depends on who we are as a person and when, um, the trauma we've experienced, past trauma, all that stuff, really plays a role. But internally, I think if you're telling yourself this is too much, then it is too much, really. And in that case, then really seeking help, reaching out to people that feel safe for you. If you can't leave that home, if you can't leave the situation you're in, even if it's a partner, whatever it could be, is they one person you can trust in that whole. So just, it doesn't need to be a therapist, like, but one person that you can talk to and feel a bit safe around.
Well, Agatha, thank you so much for sharing this time with us. Where can folks connect with you and purchase your
Yeah.
book?
Well, my book is sold on Amazon. It's also sold everywhere books are sold online. Um, so Goodreads, everything. It's available everywhere books are sold online. You can reach me through my website, which is beautifulsunshinetherapy.com. My social media, Instagram, Beautiful Sunshine Therapy as well. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And, thank you so much for the important work that you do.
Well, thanks for having me. Really lovely.
Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe to the podcast and join our community on all our socials at colorsuccesspodcast.com. Looking forward to you checking out my memoir, Cancel the Filter, Realities of a Psychologist, Podcaster, and Working Mother of Color on Amazon and wherever books are sold. I'd love to hear your Cancel the Filter moments.